Beneath the fairy chimneys of Cappadocia, entire cities lie hidden in darkness. This video will take you deep into the secret underground cities, revealing why thousands of people chose to abandon the sun. You will learn how these communities turned sheer desperation into one of history's greatest architectural achievements. How did they build entire societies in complete secrecy? And what terrifying force were they hiding from? What does it truly mean to vanish from the world above? That soft rock was not just a canvas, it was an invitation. Think of it as the world's most ancient and durable clay, a material that held its shape for millennia once carved. This is tuff, a rock born from the aftermath of colossal volcanic fury. For millions of years, the great volcanoes of central Anatolia awoke in cycles of fire and ash, laying down a deep, soft blanket across the land. Time and the elements then began their work, patiently sculpting the surface into those dreamlike towers and undulating valleys. But the true magic lay not in what was taken away by erosion, but in what was left behind. Beneath that whimsical surface, the rock remained solid yet workable, a perfect medium for human hands, with tools no more complex than a hammer, a chisel, and immense patience. A community could literally dig its future. The process was more like carving a sculpture than constructing a building. There were no bricks to bake, no timber to fell, no mortar to mix. You simply removed what you did not need, and the space that remained was your home, your storeroom, your sanctuary. This direct carving method meant architecture was subtractive. It created spaces that were seamlessly part of the earth itself, with walls that curved naturally and ceilings that arched without a single supporting beam. The rock provided a constant, cool temperature year-round, a natural refuge from the scorching summer sun and the bitter winter winds above. It was silent, strong, and immensely private. But this geological gift came with a profound question. Why would a people go to such extraordinary lengths to build not just homes, but entire hidden civilizations within this stone? What were they seeking shelter from that the sunlit world could not provide? The answer lies not in the rock itself, but in the relentless tides of history that swept across the plains above. The story of these hidden cities begins not with their grand scale, but with a simple, practical need. Long before the soaring churches and labyrinthine tunnels of the Byzantine era, the soft rock of Cappadocia first felt the touch of human tools in a much older time. Archaeological discoveries point to the Hittites, a powerful Bronze Age empire that thrived over 3,000 years ago. For them, the volcanic tuff was not a place for permanent hiding, but a brilliant solution to an everyday challenge. They likely carved out the earliest chambers as cool, dark storage spaces, perfect for preserving precious grain, oil, and wine against the harsh Anatolian climate. These were not yet cities, but rather sensible, subterranean pantries. Perhaps they also served as temporary shelters during the intense heat of summer or unexpected conflicts. This was the seed of an idea, a demonstration that the earth itself could be shaped to serve and protect a community. This tradition of carving into the living rock did not fade with the Hittites. In the centuries that followed, as Phrygian and later Persian influences swept across the region, those early chambers were slowly expanded upon. A storage room might gain a connecting passage, a simple shelter might be deepened. With each new modification, the purpose of these spaces began to subtly shift. The additions hint at something beyond mere practicality, a growing desire for concealment and security. It was no longer just about preserving food, but about preserving people. These ancient layers, buried deepest within the complexes we see today, form a silent archaeological record. They tell a story of a human instinct as old as civilization itself, the instinct to use the earth as a shield. For over a millennium, this was a slow, quiet evolution, a foundational practice being laid down stone by stone, generation by generation. It was a solution waiting for a problem of unprecedented scale, and that problem was on the horizon, arriving with the thunder of hooves and a new kind of warfare that would force the hidden world to grow to impossible dimensions. The plains of Anatolia became a stage for a new and terrifying kind of conflict. The great Byzantine Empire, the successor to Rome in the east, found its heartland under relentless pressure. From the deserts to the south arose a powerful and dynamic force, the armies of the early Islamic caliphates. Beginning in the 7th century, their fast-moving cavalry launched raid after raid deep into Byzantine territory, striking without warning to seize wealth, captives, and territory. For the farming villages and monastic communities of Cappadocia, this was a nightmare scenario. Their world was no longer defined by the slow cycles of harvest and trade, but by the sudden dust cloud on the horizon, the urgent cry of a lookout. Life on the surface had become perilously exposed. This constant state of alertness demanded a radical new solution, one that went far beyond the simple storage pits and seasonal shelters of the past. The threat was not just to their possessions, but to their very lives and way of life. In response, the communities of Cappadocia made a collective, monumental decision. They would not flee. Instead, they would perform a magic trick on a staggering scale, making their entire society vanish. The soft rock beneath their feet, once a convenience, now became their ultimate strategic asset. What began as small expansions transformed into a region-wide, secret construction project. This was civil engineering in the name of sheer survival. They began to dig not just deeper but smarter. Individual family shelters were connected like cells in a honeycomb. Ventilation shafts were carefully disguised as natural rock fissures. Massive circular stone doors weighing hundreds of pounds were carved to roll across key passageways, sealing invaders out. They engineered entire subterranean ecosystems with designated levels for livestock, for worship, for cooking, and for communal living. These were no longer bolt holes, they were meticulously planned, vertical cities designed to house thousands of people for months at a time. The entire landscape became a hidden fortress, its true purpose invisible from above. This was a testament to a community's will to endure, a physical manifestation of their faith and solidarity carved directly into the bones of the earth. But to live in such a place required a set of rules, a social contract forged in darkness. How did thousands of people organize life in a world without sun, without easy escape, where every breath and every sound was shared? The sheer scale of this ambition becomes real in a place called Derinkuyu. In 1963, a man in the town of Derinkuyu was renovating his home. As he knocked down a wall in his cellar, he discovered something astonishing, a dark passageway leading into a void. Curiosity led him further, and he soon realized he had not found a simple cave, but a doorway into a lost world. What he had stumbled upon was an entire underground city, a hidden metropolis that had been sleeping in silence for centuries. This accidental discovery pulled back the curtain on Cappadocia's deepest secret. Derinkuyu is a staggering feat of engineering, plunging approximately 85 meters straight down into the earth. To visualize that depth, picture stacking 24 ordinary houses on top of one another, then descending past them all into the cool, silent rock. Researchers estimate this labyrinth could have sheltered up to 20,000 people, a population the size of a major medieval town, all living unseen beneath the feet of any army passing above. But this was not a grim, dark cavern. It was a meticulously planned community built for life, not just survival. The architects of Derinkuyu solved the fundamental problems of subterranean existence with brilliant simplicity. Long, narrow ventilation shafts, cleverly disguised from the surface, channeled a constant supply of fresh air to every level, preventing stagnation and allowing for safe fires. They tapped into deep underground water sources, creating secure wells that could not be poisoned or cut off by an enemy above. There were spaces for every function of daily life, from storage rooms piled high with provisions to communal kitchens, from winemaking presses to stables for livestock. They even carved out churches for worship and rooms believed to be religious schools, ensuring their culture and faith could endure the long months of confinement. The city's defense was its most chilling innovation: massive circular stone doors, carved from solid rock and weighing up to half a ton. These slabs could be rolled across key corridors from the inside, sealing off entire sections like a vault. An invader who managed to find an entrance would be funneled into a narrow, dark passage, only to find it abruptly blocked by a wall of stone, while defenders could retreat deeper into the maze. Derinkuyu stands as ultimate proof that these were not temporary refuges, but self-sufficient worlds. They represent a profound choice by a community to preserve their entire way of life by literally burying it, waiting in patient darkness for the chance to one day walk in the sun again. Yet Derinkuyu was not alone. It was merely one node in a vast, hidden network that turned a whole region into a fortress. Just a few miles from the staggering depth of Derinkuyu, a different kind of underground marvel awaits. The city of Kaymaklı reveals another facet of this hidden civilization, one built not for dramatic vertical plunges, but for sprawling, horizontal complexity. Where Derinkuyu feels like a deep fortress, Kaymaklı unfolds like an endless, intricate maze. Its design is deliberately confusing, a warren of tunnels and chambers carved across 8 discovered levels that spread out beneath the earth like the roots of a colossal, ancient tree. The ceilings here are often lower, the passageways tighter, forcing you to move in a constant, protective crouch. This was not an architectural oversight, but a brilliant defensive strategy. An invading force unfamiliar with the layout would be funneled into these narrow, twisting corridors where they could easily become disoriented, separated, and vulnerable. For the residents who knew every turn, however, this labyrinth was a secure home. Kaymaklı's layout suggests it functioned as a vast residential district, a true underground neighborhood. The rock is honeycombed with countless small, family-sized living quarters, each one opening into shared common areas. You can find expansive communal kitchens with carved hearths and grinding stones, and row upon row of storage rooms that once held enough food to sustain the population through long sieges. The genius of Kaymaklı lies in its seamless integration of life's necessities. Ingenious ventilation shafts disguised from the surface provided a constant, gentle airflow. Sophisticated water management channels collected precious moisture from deep within the rock into carved cisterns. Every element was designed for communal endurance, a testament to a society that understood its survival depended on unity and meticulous planning. Walking through Kaymaklı today, you gain a profound appreciation for the social contract of these cities. Life here required incredible cooperation, shared resources, and absolute trust in your neighbors. The architecture itself enforced a collective existence where privacy was minimal but communal security was everything. This sprawling, labyrinthine design highlights a crucial truth. These were not monolithic structures but a network of specialized spaces. While Derinkuyu may have been a deep stronghold and administrative center, Kaymaklı feels like the lived-in neighborhood that connected to it. And this leads to a breathtaking realization. These individual cities were likely not isolated at all. The true genius of these hidden worlds is revealed not in their scale, but in their invisible systems. To carve a few rooms into soft rock is one thing, but to engineer an entire, breathable, sustainable city for thousands of people, potentially for months on end, required a level of foresight that borders on the prophetic. This was pre-industrial engineering at its most brilliant, solving the fundamental equations of human survival deep within a stone tomb. The first and most urgent problem was the very air itself. Without constant circulation, a crowded underground space would quickly become a suffocating chamber. The builders solved this with a network of slender ventilation shafts, some stretching over 100 meters straight up to the surface. These were not simple holes, they were carefully calculated chimneys. The difference in temperature between the cool subterranean chambers and the warmer surface air created a natural convection current, a silent, perpetual breath for the city. These shafts also cunningly regulated humidity and dispersed smoke from kitchens and lamps, all while their surface openings were camouflaged among natural rock formations, invisible to anyone above. Water was the next critical equation. A besieged city above ground could have its wells poisoned or its aqueducts cut, but a city within the earth had to be self-reliant. The engineers of Cappadocia tapped directly into the living rock, carving down to the permanent water table to create secure, internal wells. These were not just sources of drinking water, they were the lifeline of the community, used for cooking, for livestock, and even to help control the microclimate within the chambers. Managing waste with equal foresight was essential for health and morale. Specialized pits were carved in isolated areas, often with ventilation to prevent dangerous gases from accumulating, demonstrating a pragmatic understanding of sanitation that kept the community healthy during long confinements. Then there was the matter of ultimate security, embodied in the most iconic feature of these cities, the massive rolling stone doors. Carved from a single, dense block of rock, these discs could weigh half a ton. They sat in specially carved grooves in front of crucial passageways and could be rolled into place from the inside with surprising efficiency, sealing off entire levels like a bank vault. An invader who breached an outer entrance would find themselves in a dark, narrow tunnel, only to confront this impassable stone wall, while defenders could retreat deeper into the labyrinth. This holistic design, considering air, water, waste, and defense in one integrated plan, reveals a profound truth. The builders were not just digging shelters, they were creating sealed ecosystems for human life. Their work shows a deep, intuitive mastery of physics, hydrology, and sociology, all dedicated to a single purpose: preserving the flame of their community through the longest, darkest nights imaginable. Yet a city is more than its tunnels and wells. It is the people who breathe life into the stone. The true miracle of these underground worlds was not their engineering, but the society they sustained. For a community to survive for months in total darkness, without sun or stars to mark the days, required a social blueprint as carefully designed as the ventilation shafts. This was a radical reorganization of life itself, transforming what could have been a desperate, chaotic scramble into a disciplined and enduring refuge. Every function of daily life was assigned its own carved space, creating a subterranean map of communal survival. Small, humble chambers served as family living quarters, offering a sliver of privacy amidst the collective effort. Larger halls became communal kitchens where shared meals were prepared over carefully vented hearths, the smoke whisked away by the hidden shafts. Even faith had its designated place, with beautifully simple churches carved directly into the rock, their altars and frescoes a spiritual anchor in the overwhelming dark. Practicality was woven into every level, from stables for precious livestock to workshops for tools, and even specialized rooms for pressing grapes into wine and olives into oil, ensuring not just sustenance but a semblance of normalcy and comfort. In such an environment, leadership was not about power, but about the meticulous stewardship of life. Someone had to manage the strict rationing of food and water from the deep cisterns, ensuring every family received their share. Someone had to enforce the essential rules of sanitation and quiet, to prevent illness and maintain morale in the cramped quarters. And most critically, someone had to be ready to coordinate the city's defense at a moment's notice, to direct the rolling of the great stone doors and the movement of people deeper into the labyrinth at the first sign of danger from above. This was a social contract forged in absolute necessity. The close quarters meant every action, every sound affected the whole. There was no room for conflict or hoarding. Survival was a collective project. This intense interdependence fostered a powerful, unbreakable sense of shared identity. You were no longer just a farmer or a merchant from a surface village. You were a vital part of the city in the rock, your life intrinsically linked to the person in the next chamber. This social blueprint transformed a potential nightmare of confinement into a testament to human cooperation. It proved that the most vital resource in any crisis is not stored in a granary or a well, but in the trust and unity of the community itself. But this way of life, so carefully engineered, could not last forever. What finally prompted these communities to seal their stone doors for the last time and return to the world of light? The plains of Anatolia became a stage for a new and terrifying kind of conflict. The great Byzantine Empire, the successor to Rome in the east, found its heartland under relentless pressure. From the deserts to the south arose a powerful and dynamic force, the armies of the early Islamic caliphates. Beginning in the 7th century, their fast-moving cavalry launched raid after raid deep into Byzantine territory, striking without warning to seize wealth, captives, and territory. For the farming villages and monastic communities of Cappadocia, this was a nightmare scenario. Their world was no longer defined by the slow cycles of harvest and trade, but by the sudden dust cloud on the horizon, the urgent cry of a lookout. Life on the surface had become perilously exposed. This constant state of alertness demanded a radical new solution, one that went far beyond the simple storage pits and seasonal shelters of the past. The threat was not just to their possessions, but to their very lives and way of life. In response, the communities of Cappadocia made a collective, monumental decision. They would not flee. Instead, they would perform a magic trick on a staggering scale, making their entire society vanish. The soft rock beneath their feet, once a convenience, now became their ultimate strategic asset. What began as small expansions transformed into a region-wide, secret construction project. This was civil engineering in the name of sheer survival. They began to dig not just deeper but smarter. Individual family shelters were connected like cells in a honeycomb. Ventilation shafts were carefully disguised as natural rock fissures. Massive circular stone doors weighing hundreds of pounds were carved to roll across key passageways, sealing invaders out. They engineered entire subterranean ecosystems with designated levels for livestock, for worship, for cooking, and for communal living. These were no longer bolt holes. They were meticulously planned, vertical cities designed to house thousands of people for months at a time. The entire landscape became a hidden fortress, its true purpose invisible from above. This was a testament to a community's will to endure, a physical manifestation of their faith and solidarity carved directly into the bones of the earth. But to live in such a place required a set of rules, a social contract forged in darkness. How did thousands of people organize life in a world without sun, without easy escape, where every breath and every sound was shared? Yet the threat of foreign armies was only one layer of the danger. The very geography that made Cappadocia a sanctuary also made it a target, crisscrossed by lucrative trade routes carrying silks, spices, and precious metals. In times when the imperial grip from Constantinople weakened, these roads became hunting grounds for bandits and ambitious local warlords. For an isolated village, a passing caravan was a source of commerce, but a roaming band of mercenaries or raiders could mean sudden, devastating loss. The underground cities offered a defense against this more chaotic, unpredictable violence, a way to make a community and its wealth simply disappear from view until the danger passed. Even more complex were the dangers born from within the empire itself. The Byzantine world was not always a united front. Periods of internal conflict, rebellion, or disputed succession could turn the countryside into a battleground for rival factions. For ordinary people, choosing a side in such conflicts was itself a tremendous risk, potentially inviting retaliation from the eventual victors. The hidden cities presented a third option, a profound and powerful neutrality. By vanishing underground, a community could effectively opt out of the surface world's political storms, refusing to be pawns in a distant power struggle. This multi-purpose utility is what made these subterranean refuges so invaluable. They were not built for a single enemy or a specific decade. They were a perpetual insurance policy carved in stone. Whether the danger came from a foreign army on a strategic campaign, from bandits seeking quick plunder, or from the fallout of a civil war the villagers had no part in, the solution was the same. Roll the great stone door, retreat into the familiar labyrinth, and wait for the storm above to blow over. This adaptability speaks to a deep, hard-won wisdom about the nature of their world. The people of Cappadocia understood that turmoil was not an exception, but a recurring feature of life on the surface. Their greatest architectural achievement was therefore a monument to resilience, a prepared space of calm deliberately built beneath the unpredictable tides of history. But the greatest challenge may not have been engineering the city, but enduring the life within it. Beyond the brilliant ventilation and secure water supplies lay a more subtle, more personal frontier, the human mind itself. To choose to live in a world of perpetual twilight, to trade the open sky for a carved ceiling, demanded a psychological resilience as formidable as the stone walls. Imagine the profound disorientation of those first days underground, when the sun's reliable rhythm vanished, replaced by the flickering, finite light of oil lamps. Time itself would have become a fluid concept, measured not by dawn and dusk, but by the changing of guards, the shared meals, and the cycles of prayer. In that constant, hushed dimness, the mind could play tricks where a distant drip of water echoed like a footstep, and the silence between communities felt heavy with unspoken worry. The close quarters meant there was no true solitude, no private space for fear or grief. Every sigh, every whispered conversation, every child's cry was part of the shared atmosphere. Anxiety over dwindling supplies, the health of loved ones, and the unknowable threat above would have been a quiet, constant hum in the background of daily life. Yet it is within this pressurized environment that we see the most profound human response. They did not merely dig holes to hide in, they carved spaces to live for. The creation of churches deep within the rock is perhaps the most telling act of defiance. These were not afterthoughts but central features. In carving altars and painting simple frescoes by lamplight, they were actively transplanting the core of their spiritual and cultural identity into the darkness. This was a declaration that their faith, their community, their very sense of self would not be erased by circumstance. Gathering for worship in those subterranean chapels reaffirmed their shared purpose and provided a crucial anchor of normalcy. The communal kitchens and shared storerooms enforced a powerful social contract, a daily reminder that survival was a collective project. This structured routine, this deliberate maintenance of social and spiritual life, was their psychological lifeline. It transformed a desperate retreat into a purposeful vigil. The light they lived by was no longer celestial, but human, forged from the shared will to endure and the unwavering determination to preserve their way of life until they could walk in the sun again. This mental fortress, built from faith and fellowship, may have been their most essential innovation of all. Deep within the silent stone, they carved spaces for their souls. The architects of these hidden cities understood that survival meant more than just air, water, and food. It required a sanctuary for the human spirit. Scattered throughout the labyrinthine levels and in the secluded valleys connected to them are the rock-cut churches of Cappadocia. These are not the dark, cramped afterthoughts one might expect, but astonishing feats of subterranean architecture. Using the same simple tools that carved their homes, These artisans sculpted the soft tuff into forms of profound grace. They created soaring domes that seemed to defy the weight of the earth above, elegant columns that appeared to support the ceiling, and rounded apses that gave focus to sacred rituals. The rock itself was transformed into a deliberate echo of the grand basilicas on the surface, a defiant replication of a world they had temporarily left behind. But the true wonder emerges when you lift a lamp to the walls. In the flickering light, vibrant worlds of color come alive. These churches are adorned with breathtaking frescoes, painted directly onto the carefully prepared rock surface. The images tell familiar stories, scenes from the scriptures depicting saints, angels, and the life of Christ, rendered in rich blues, deep reds, and luminous gold. To stand in one of these chambers today is to witness an act of incredible hope. In the midst of fear and confinement, under the constant pressure of an unseen threat, the community's greatest artists were commissioned not to forge weapons but to create beauty. They mixed their pigments and worked by the faint, smoky light of oil lamps, dedicating countless hours to ensuring that even in the deepest darkness, the stories of their faith would be visible, a visual liturgy carved and painted into the very heart of the mountain. These churches were the living, beating heart of the underground community. They served a purpose far beyond weekly worship. In times of extended confinement, they became the central gathering space, the one place where the entire population could come together not just for prayer, but for baptisms, for festivals, and for the simple, vital comfort of shared ceremony. In a world where every sound was shared and privacy was scarce, the church offered a different kind of communion, a collective reaffirmation of identity and purpose. The rituals performed here, surrounded by the brilliant frescoes, reinforced a powerful truth. They were not merely hiding, they were preserving a way of life. Their culture, their beliefs, their very sense of who they were, was being actively protected and practiced in this sacred, secret space. The presence of such elaborate sacred art in the darkness is one of history's most powerful statements of resilience. It proclaims that the human need for meaning and beauty cannot be buried, even when people themselves must be. The frescoes were a light that no invading army could ever snuff out, because that light was carried within the community and given form on the walls of their refuge. This creation of beauty in a place of fear transforms our understanding of these cities. They were not monuments to despair, but to enduring hope. They show us that even when forced to retreat from the sun, humanity will always find a way to illuminate the shadows from within. This profound legacy, however, did not remain a secret forever. A chance discovery in the modern era would suddenly pull this entire hidden world back into the light. The frescoes were a testament to the spirit, but a community also needs bread. To sustain thousands of people in total concealment for months required more than stored supplies. It demanded a functioning, albeit hidden, economy. This was not an economy of markets and currency, but one of meticulous rationing, skilled craftsmanship, and the quiet, continuous production of essentials within the stone walls. While vast underground granaries held precious stores of wheat, barley, and legumes, and cisterns preserved oil and wine, long-term survival hinged on what could be actively produced in situ. Archaeologists find the evidence carved into the rock itself, specialized chambers with troughs and tethering points that served as livestock pens. These animals were not just future meals, they were living assets providing milk, wool, and, crucially, fertilizer to sustain any potential subterranean gardening efforts or to enrich soils upon their return to the surface. In some cities, you can even find dovecotes, small niches carved high on walls to house pigeons or doves. These birds offered a dual purpose, a source of fresh eggs and meat, and their droppings, known as guano, served as a highly effective natural fertilizer. This reveals an economy thinking in cycles, where every resource had to be leveraged and nothing could be wasted. Alongside these living resources were the workshops. Small, dimly lit chambers show signs of tool repair and maintenance, where blacksmiths would have carefully tended to metal implements and carpenters would have salvaged and refashioned wooden items. Trade between families and between connected cities would have continued in a limited, barter-based capacity, a quiet exchange of skills, repaired tools, or crafted goods to meet specific needs. But the most critical economic asset of all was water. The deep, internal wells were not just feats of engineering. They represented an immense communal investment of labor and the ultimate form of subterranean capital. Access to this water was life itself, and its management would have been governed by strict, universally understood rules to prevent conflict and ensure equity. This underground economy was necessarily austere, stripped of all luxury, and focused purely on the mechanics of endurance, yet its existence demonstrates a breathtaking level of foresight. The people of these cities were not just hiding, they were actively planning to outlast a crisis by turning their refuge into a temporarily self-contained economic unit, a closed loop of production and consumption designed to keep the heart of the community beating until the world above was safe once more. But the most captivating mystery lies in the spaces between these cities. What if the underground world was not a collection of isolated strongholds, but a single, interconnected realm? Legends whispered for generations speak of secret tunnels, long, dark passageways linking Derinkuyu to Kaymaklı and beyond, creating a subterranean highway for communication and escape. The idea is profoundly compelling, painting a picture of an entire landscape secretly hollowed out, where a person could travel for miles without ever seeing the sun, moving between populated districts deep within the earth. This network hypothesis captures the imagination like few other aspects of the story, suggesting a coordination and scale that feels almost mythical. Yet when we look for solid evidence, the path grows dim. While the two cities are indeed close, only a few miles apart, no definitive, publicly accessible tunnel connecting them has ever been confirmed by archaeologists. Explorations have revealed that both cities have multiple entrance and exit points, some leading to the surface and others ending in collapsed or blocked passages, their original destinations now a matter of speculation. Local stories persist, of course, passed down through families, telling of ancestors who used these routes. Some historical accounts from later periods also hint at the possibility. But in the absence of a clear, navigable corridor, the Grand Tunnel remains in the realm of tantalizing legend. What is far more likely, and in many ways just as strategically brilliant, is that each major city was the central hub of a dense regional network. Think of Derinkuyu not as a lone metropolis, but as a capital. Radiating out from it through the surrounding countryside would have been dozens, perhaps hundreds, of smaller satellite refuges, family hideouts, and monastic retreats, all carved into the same soft rock. These smaller complexes, often just a few rooms deep, could have served as early warning posts, relay stations, or temporary shelters for those caught too far from the main city when danger struck. In this model, the true network was not a single hidden highway, but a decentralized web of options. A shepherd on a distant hillside, spotting dust on the horizon, would not have to sprint all the way to Derinkuyu. He could duck into a known, smaller shelter, seal the entrance, and wait. From there, if the threat persisted, secure, known pathways overground, or perhaps very short connecting tunnels between nearby clusters, could allow for a staged, secretive retreat toward the greater safety of the deep city. This system turns the entire region into a single, responsive defensive organism. The lack of one colossal tunnel does not diminish the achievement, it refines it. It suggests a pragmatic, adaptable approach to security, where multiple layers of refuge provided flexibility. The enduring power of the tunnel legend, however, speaks to something deeper in us. It fulfills a desire to see these communities not just as survivors, but as masters of a hidden geography, moving unseen beneath the feet of history. Whether through myth or through the verifiable web of small refuges, the result is the same. Cappadocia was not just a place where people built hidden cities, it was a landscape that itself became a secret. The great stone doors rolled shut for the last time, and silence reclaimed the tunnels. As the centuries turned, the political landscape of Anatolia shifted dramatically. The Byzantine Empire, after periods of resurgence, eventually gave way to new powers, most notably the Seljuk Turks and later the Ottomans. With these changes came a new stability. The borders solidified, and the relentless, lightning-fast raids that had defined life for generations became a memory of a more turbulent past. The primary reason for the city's existence had, quite simply, faded away. Without the constant, imminent threat, the profound hardship of subterranean life lost its urgent purpose. Why endure months in the cool, dark silence when the sunlit world offered peace? Gradually, the communities of Cappadocia made a collective, quiet choice to return to the surface for good. They brought their lives back into the light, rebuilding their villages and farms above the very fortresses that had saved them. The underground cities did not vanish overnight, however. They entered a long, slow twilight of utility. For many generations, they served as convenient, natural cellars. Families used the upper levels for cool storage of food and wine, much as the ancient Hittites had done millennia before. Shepherds might use a familiar entrance as a seasonal shelter for their flocks during harsh weather. But the deeper levels, the labyrinths of living quarters and chapels and sealed doors, were left to the darkness. As decades became centuries, even these practical uses dwindled. Entrances collapsed or were deliberately filled in for safety. Wind-blown soil and creeping vegetation obscured the doorways. The precise knowledge of their full layouts, once a matter of communal survival, began to fade. Parents might tell children stories of the old cities beneath their feet, tales that blurred the line between history and folklore. The hidden metropolises became the stuff of local legend, whispered about but rarely seen, a secret the very landscape seemed determined to keep. This long abandonment, this forgetting, became an unexpected gift. Because they were sealed and ignored, these cities were spared from being repurposed, rebuilt, or looted through later historical periods. They became perfect time capsules, preserving the daily life of the Byzantine era in astonishing detail. The soot marks from the last oil lamp, the grooves worn into the floor by a rolling stone door, the faint outlines of a fresco awaiting pigment, all were left untouched, waiting. Their rediscovery was not the work of archaeologists with maps and funding, but of everyday life intruding upon the past. It was a man renovating his home in Derinkuyu in 1963, knocking down a wall to find a void. It was a farmer clearing a field whose plow scraped against worked stone. It was a child chasing a goat into a crevice and not returning. These accidental moments ripped away the veil of centuries in an instant. A modern person, in the midst of their ordinary day, would suddenly find themselves standing at the threshold of a lost world, staring into a darkness that had hidden an entire civilization. The rediscovery was a profound shock, not just to the locals, but to the world of history. It forced a complete re-evaluation of Cappadocia's story. This was no longer just a region of beautiful fairy chimneys and painted rock churches. It was the site of one of the most ambitious defensive projects in human history. The legends were real, and they were more incredible than anyone had dreamed. Each open doorway was an invitation to step out of time, to walk the same corridors where thousands once held their breath, waiting for the all-clear from a world they could not see. The silent cities had finally ended their long vigil, ready to tell their story. The accidental rediscovery was just the beginning of a much longer story. Unlocking the full truth of these cities required a different kind of patience, the slow, meticulous science of modern archaeology. Beginning in earnest in the mid-20th century, teams of researchers faced a task as daunting as the original construction, stabilizing this hidden world without destroying it. Their first challenge was the very material that made the cities possible, the soft, fragile tuff. Every new excavation risked causing a collapse, so stabilization became a careful ballet of supports and reinforcements before any real exploration could even start. Then came the mapping. How do you chart a three-dimensional maze in near-total darkness, where a single corridor might connect 5 different levels? Early surveys were painstakingly slow, done with tape measures and notebooks, creating maps that were more like abstract puzzles than clear blueprints. Each new room uncovered was a revelation, a frozen moment in time. A scatter of animal bones told of the last meal prepared before a door was sealed. A simple stone loom weight spoke of daily domestic life continuing in the gloom. A forgotten tool left in a corner became a direct link to the hands that carved the city itself. But perhaps the most delicate task of all was preserving the vibrant frescoes in the underground churches. These paintings, surviving for centuries in a stable, dark environment, are incredibly vulnerable to changes in humidity and temperature. Introducing modern air, light, and visitors could cause them to flake and fade in a matter of years. Archaeologists now work with environmental scientists to create microclimates within these chambers, using technology to monitor conditions and ensure these masterpieces of faith endure for future generations to see. Today, the work continues with tools the original builders could never have imagined. Three-dimensional laser scanners now sweep through the silent corridors, capturing every curve and angle with millimeter precision, creating digital twins of the entire complex. This allows researchers to study and map the cities from anywhere in the world without ever touching a fragile wall. This careful, methodical work transforms awe into understanding. It moves us beyond the realm of thrilling legend and into the grounded reality of history. Each tiny discovery, a charred seed, a child's footprint in the dust, a repaired crack in a storage jar, is a piece of a vast mosaic. Slowly, painstakingly, archaeology is reassembling the human narrative from the silence, allowing the stone to finally tell its full story, not just of fear and hiding, but of resilience, community, and the extraordinary will to preserve a way of life against all odds. This instinct to seek shelter within the earth is written into our global story. From the cliffside pueblos of Mesa Verde in the American Southwest to the labyrinthine catacombs beneath Rome, and even the extensive tunnel networks used during the Second World War in places like Khu Khai, Vietnam, humanity has repeatedly turned to the ground for protection. Each of these places tells a powerful story of adaptation. Yet, when we place Cappadocia beside them, its distinct ambition comes into sharp, breathtaking focus. Many underground spaces served a single, specific purpose. The catacombs of Rome were primarily sacred resting places, vast memorial networks for the departed. The cliff dwellings were magnificent, defensible homes built into alcoves, but they remained fundamentally on the face of the earth, open to light and air. The tunnels of Khu Khai were brilliant military installations designed for guerrilla warfare and survival during a specific, intense conflict. Cappadocia's cities, however, were something else entirely. They were not just for the departed or for soldiers or for a single community on a cliff. They were engineered to be complete, permanent alternative settlements for an entire regional population: men, women, children, the elderly, their livestock, and their faith. This was not a specialized facility, it was a parallel society, a fully functional mirror of the surface world designed to operate for months or even years. The scale of this social engineering is what sets it apart as a unique benchmark in the pre-modern world. It represents the most comprehensive, community-oriented expression of this ancient human adaptation. While others dug for a specific purpose, the people of Cappadocia dug to preserve their entire way of life, embedding every facet of their culture into the living rock. This comparison does not diminish other sites, but rather illuminates the extraordinary scope of the choice made here. It was a commitment to vanish completely, yet to remain wholly themselves, waiting in patient darkness for a dawn they trusted would eventually return. That long silence ended not with a whisper but with a global conversation. The very act of discovery that brought these cities back to life now presents their greatest modern challenge. Today, the ancient refuges built to withstand armies face a new, peaceful, yet relentless force. Millions of visitors from around the world, drawn by the same awe we have been exploring. This creates a profound paradox. Tourism is a powerful force for good, providing the essential economic resources needed for ongoing research, stabilization, and protection. It transforms local communities, bringing global attention and investment to a region whose history deserves to be celebrated. Most importantly, it fulfills the deepest human purpose of these sites, to be witnessed, to educate, and to inspire. Yet, this very act of love and curiosity also threatens the fragile reality of the cities themselves. The soft, tough stone, so perfect for carving, is vulnerable to the modern environment we bring with us. The collective humidity from thousands of breaths, the microscopic oils from a hand resting on a wall, even the vibrations from constant footfall, can slowly, invisibly degrade surfaces that have survived for over 1,000 years. The brilliant frescoes in the underground churches are especially sensitive, their pigments at risk from changes in air quality and temperature. The cities, engineered to protect life from external threats, now require protection from the consequences of their own fame. Managing this delicate balance is a continuous, sophisticated effort. You will not find crowds roaming freely through the deepest labyrinths. Access is carefully managed through designated pathways and timed entry systems, controlling the flow of people to prevent overcrowding. Sensitive areas are protected by barriers, not to distance visitors, but to ensure a respectful space between the present and the past. Behind the scenes, environmental sensors constantly monitor humidity and carbon dioxide levels, allowing conservators to make real-time adjustments to preserve the microclimates that have kept these spaces intact. The goal is not to lock the doors again, but to steward them wisely. It is to allow the wonder of walking these corridors to be possible not just for us, but for generations yet to come. In this way, the cities are undergoing one final, remarkable transformation. They are no longer shelters against raids, nor forgotten time capsules. They have become active ambassadors of cultural heritage, their stone walls now teaching lessons in resilience, engineering, and the shared responsibility we all hold for preserving human history. Their story continues, evolving from one of survival in darkness to one of preservation in the light. Their story transcends the stone from which they were carved. While the last great stone door rolled shut centuries ago, the underground cities of Cappadocia never truly returned to silence. They have undergone a remarkable transformation, evolving from a practical refuge into a profound cultural symbol. They stand now not just as a feat of engineering, but as a universal emblem of the human spirit's capacity to endure. In the face of overwhelming challenge, these communities did not simply hide, they recreated their entire world, demonstrating that resilience is not merely about withstanding pressure, but about creatively, collectively adapting to it. This narrative of ingenious survival against the odds resonates on a deep, almost mythic level, speaking to a shared understanding of what people can achieve when unity becomes their most vital resource. Within modern Turkey, these hidden cities are a powerful source of national pride and historical identity. They are a tangible, awe-inspiring chapter in the long, layered story of Anatolia, a region often described as the cradle of civilizations. To walk through Derinkuyu or Kaymaklı is to physically traverse that history, to touch the handiwork of generations who shaped their destiny from the very land beneath them. They are a reminder that the nation's roots are intertwined with stories of profound tenacity, a legacy carved not in conquest but in communal perseverance. This connection fosters a deep respect for the land itself, recognizing it not just as a landscape, but as an active participant in the story of its people. For the global visitor, the experience is often transformative. It is one thing to read about subterranean cities, and another entirely to descend into their cool, silent depths. The scale is humbling, the engineering prompts wonder, but the most lasting impression is usually emotional. You are walking through a monument to collective will. The low ceilings, the narrow passages, the clever air shafts, and the distant wells all tell a story of a community that made an unimaginable choice and saw it through. It becomes a deeply personal reflection on modern life, prompting questions about our own resilience, our connection to community, and what we would be willing to build together to protect what we hold dear. The cities cease to be a distant historical fact and become a mirror. The ultimate legacy of these places, therefore, lies not in their abandoned tunnels, but in the timeless human conversations they continue to inspire. They teach us about the architecture of trust, showing how social bonds must be as carefully engineered as any ventilation shaft. They demonstrate that true security often comes not from walls alone, but from shared purpose and meticulous preparation. They remind us that culture and faith are not luxuries for peaceful times, but essential nourishment for the soul during the longest nights. In a world that still faces uncertainty, the silent cities of Cappadocia offer a quiet, powerful lesson from the past. They prove that even when forced to retreat from the light, humanity possesses an incredible ability to create shelter, sustain hope, and patiently wait for the dawn. Their greatest triumph was not in disappearing from the world, but in ensuring that everything that made them who they were could survive to see it again. Yet for all their true wonder, these cities have also become wrapped in layers of modern myth. Popular stories sometimes stretch the facts to legendary proportions, suggesting these labyrinths housed entire populations for decades on end, or that secret tunnels connected them across hundreds of kilometers like a subterranean superhighway. While these tales are thrilling, the historical reality, when we examine it closely, is in many ways more impressive because it is credible. Take the idea of permanent habitation. These were engineered as refuges, not as permanent underground capitals. While they could indeed shelter populations in the thousands during a crisis, archaeological evidence suggests stays were likely measured in weeks or months, not years or generations. The social and psychological strain, along with the eventual depletion of stored resources, made these places a brilliant pause button for society, not a new way of life. They were always meant to be temporary, a testament to planning for the worst while hoping for a return to normalcy. Another common misconception ties the city's origins to the earliest Christians fleeing Roman persecution centuries earlier. While this narrative is powerful, the major construction phases we see today, with their sophisticated defense systems and large-scale layouts, align with the later Byzantine era, a period of conflict with different adversaries. This does not erase the deep Christian heritage of the region, beautifully preserved in the frescoes, but it grounds the city's primary purpose in a specific historical context of medieval defense. Separating fact from fiction does not diminish the achievement. If anything, it amplifies it. The truth reveals a community responding to a clear and present danger with breathtaking practicality and collective discipline. They did not need to live underground for generations to be remarkable. They only needed to create the option, to build a perfect instrument of survival, and have the fortitude to use it when the time came. This grounded reality of people carving a complex insurance policy into the earth is a story of foresight and resilience that needs no exaggeration to inspire awe. It asks us to appreciate not a fantasy, but a meticulously planned, human-scale miracle of endurance. This stable climate was a silent, powerful ally in their survival. While the massive stone doors provided security from human threats, the rock itself offered a different kind of protection, a perfect, passive shield against the harsh Anatolian elements. Above ground, the plateau experiences extremes, with summers that blaze under a relentless sun and winters where biting winds sweep across the open plains. Life on the surface demanded constant adaptation to these swings. Below, however, the volcanic tuff created a remarkably different world. Acting as a superb natural insulator, it maintained a constant, cool temperature year-round, hovering between 13 and 15 degrees Celsius, or about 55 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit. This was not a minor comfort, it was a fundamental strategic advantage. For a community in hiding, this consistent environment solved one of the most persistent challenges of pre-modern life: preservation. Their most vital treasure was not gold but food. Granaries carved deep into the rock, kept at this steady, cool temperature, would have dramatically slowed the spoilage of precious grain, legumes, and dried fruits. Cheeses and wines, essential sources of nutrition and even morale, could be stored for far longer without deteriorating. This natural refrigeration meant that the careful calculations for a months-long siege were far more likely to succeed. The provisions they labored to store would remain edible, turning their stockpiles from a hopeful gamble into a reliable lifeline. But the benefit extended far beyond the storerooms. For the people living there, this climate was a profound relief. After the initial shock of leaving the sun, the underground chambers offered a reprieve from the exhausting heat of a Cappadocian summer. There was no need for complex cooling systems, just the gentle, constant chill of the earth. In winter, when the surface world was gripped by frost, the deep rooms remained cool but never freezing, protecting the community from the dangers of hypothermia without the need for vast stores of scarce firewood. This natural climate control was in effect a free and utterly reliable utility. It reduced their energy needs, simplified daily life, and directly increased their chances of enduring a long confinement. It transformed the underground from a place of mere safety into a space that was, in many practical respects, superior for the core tasks of sustaining life. The earth was not just their fortress, it was their pantry and their climate-controlled home, a partner in their vigil. From a purely tactical standpoint, these cities perfected a form of warfare by refusing to fight. This was passive defense elevated to an art form, a complete inversion of everything we associate with medieval fortification. Consider the classic castle, built to project power. Its high walls and imposing towers are a statement of control, designed to dominate the landscape and dare an enemy to attack. The underground cities made the opposite statement. They presented no target at all. An invading force, perhaps a fast-moving cavalry unit from the caliphates, would sweep into a Cappadocian valley expecting to find villages to raid, granaries to loot, and people to capture. Instead, they would discover an eerie, empty silence. The fields might be tended, a few animals might wander, but the people, their food, and their valuables had simply vanished. There were no walls to scale, no gates to splinter with a battering ram, no central keep to besiege. The entire community had dissolved into the landscape itself, leaving the frustrated army with nothing to conquer and no way to sustain itself in hostile territory. This strategy weaponized patience and geography. The army above ground was exposed, consuming its own limited supplies under the sun, while the community below lived on its carefully hoarded reserves in the cool dark. Time, which is always the enemy of an invading force far from home, became the defender's greatest ally. Every day the army spent searching in vain was a day of dwindling morale and resources, a day that made retreat more likely. The defense did not rely on strength against strength, but on intelligence and foresight against brute force. It was a brilliant, early form of asymmetrical warfare, where a smaller, vulnerable population used its deep knowledge of the terrain to negate the advantages of a more powerful foe. They turned their apparent weakness, the need to hide, into an unconquerable strategic position. By choosing invisibility over imposing strength, they demonstrated that the ultimate victory is sometimes not to defeat your enemy in battle, but to make the battle itself impossible to fight. These artifacts are not grand treasures but humble necessities. In the cool, silent chambers of these cities, archaeologists have unearthed the quiet inventory of a life in waiting. Simple, sturdy pottery bowls and storage jars, their surfaces worn smooth by countless hands, speak of the daily ritual of meals prepared and shared in the dim light. A stone grinding wheel, its circular groove deepened by years of turning wheat into flour, tells of the fundamental work of making bread, the staff of life, even when that life was hidden from the sun. Metal tools, perhaps a small knife or a repaired agricultural implement, show a community maintaining the means of their livelihood, ready to return to their fields when the time came. The most poignant finds are often the smallest. A simple clay oil lamp designed to burn for hours with a tiny, frugal flame represents the very boundary between their world and total darkness. Its soot still marks the walls where it once hung, a faint shadow of the light that defined their days and nights. Personal items like spindle whorls, used for spinning wool into thread, reveal that the work of creating clothing and textiles continued. This was not merely about utility. It was about preserving the rhythm of domestic life, a comforting normality in an extraordinary situation. Perhaps most telling are the rare discoveries that hint at the needs of the youngest residents. A small, crudely carved toy, a collection of pebbles that might have been used for a simple game. These objects whisper of parents striving to provide not just safety, but a sense of childhood for their sons and daughters in the depths. Each artifact, from the cross worn around a neck to the cooking pot left in a corner, is a direct line across the centuries. We are not looking at exhibits in a museum case, but at the very items that were touched, used, and relied upon by people whose fears and hopes we can now almost feel. They collected not wealth but function. Their value was measured in continuity, in the ability to maintain the core routines of human life, to eat, to work, to create, to pray, and to care for one another, even when the sky was a memory of stone. These objects tell us that their world, though stripped to its essentials, was never empty. It was rich with purpose, each item a small, deliberate act of defiance against the chaos they had sealed outside their great stone doors. But the true fabric of this hidden society was woven in its smallest, most intimate spaces. The family unit, compressed into a single carved chamber, became the essential cell of survival. In a world where every resource was shared and every sound carried, the traditional rhythms of daily life did not simply continue, they intensified. The roles of women transformed under this immense pressure, becoming the quiet, indispensable engine of communal endurance. Managing the strict rationing of food from the shared granaries, preparing meals over a communal hearth without wasting a single precious ounce of grain, and maintaining the health and spirits of children in perpetual twilight. These were not domestic tasks, they were acts of strategic importance. The constant work of textile production, spinning wool from the sheltered flocks into thread and weaving it into clothing and blankets, ensured the community remained clothed and warm without any access to outside markets. This labor, often historically overlooked, was now as vital to the city's defense as the men who stood ready to roll the stone doors. Children lived at the heart of this paradox, both the most vulnerable and the ultimate reason for the city's existence. Their safety was the uncompromising purpose that justified the entire monumental effort. In the dim, lamp-lit corridors, play was necessarily quiet, confined to small, familiar corners under the watchful eyes of the entire community. Education would have been practical and oral, stories and skills passed down in whispers, lessons on how to move through the labyrinth, the importance of silence, and the rituals that maintained order. Every adult, whether related by blood or not, shared in the responsibility of protecting these young lives, creating an environment where the line between family and neighbor blurred into irrelevance. This profound interdependence reshaped the very concept of household. The nuclear family living in one small room could not function as an isolated unit. Survival demanded the pooling of labor and skills across chambers. A woman skilled in healing herbs might tend to a sick child from another family. An older child might be tasked with helping to manage the smaller livestock or carry water from the well for an elderly couple nearby. The constant, close-quarter collaboration likely softened rigid gender roles out of sheer necessity. If a man was skilled at repairing the vital leather water bags, or a woman possessed a keen understanding of the ventilation shafts and airflow, those abilities were put to use for the collective good, regardless of traditional expectations. The social hierarchy flattened under the weight of shared vulnerability. Your value was measured by your contribution to the group's endurance, not by your status on the surface. In this way, the underground city became the ultimate extended family, bound not merely by kinship but by a sacred, shared purpose. The emotional fabric of this society was woven from threads of mutual reliance, patience, and a fierce, collective love for the next generation. It was a world where every loaf of bread baked, every garment mended, and every child comforted was a direct affirmation of their will to persist. This intimate, human dimension completes the picture of their achievement. They mastered the rock not just to save their lives, but to preserve the very essence of their connections to one another. And as we emerge from contemplating this hidden world of stone and solidarity, a final, lingering question remains about the world they left behind. The city's silent legacy extends even to the land that hid them. In a profound and often overlooked way, the act of carving these vast shelters was an early, brilliant form of sustainable construction. Unlike building a castle or a town on the surface, which demands forests of timber, quarries of stone, and fields of clay for bricks, the process here was subtractive and almost waste-free. There were no supply chains, no cleared woodlands, and no piles of construction debris. The only material removed was the soft volcanic tuff itself, and even that was rarely discarded. The very rock dust and chunks excavated to create rooms and corridors were often repurposed as building blocks for surface structures or packed into other cavities, creating a near-perfect cycle of use. This method left the visible landscape above almost completely untouched. A traveler walking through Cappadocia during the city's active use would have seen only the natural wonder of fairy chimneys and rolling valleys, with no hint of the bustling, hidden metropolis below their feet. The ecological footprint was astonishingly light. The builders did not conquer the landscape, they integrated with it, weaving their habitat directly into the existing geology. They required no external resources beyond their own labor and ingenuity, tapping into the Earth's own stable temperature for climate control and its deep fractures for water and air. In our modern age, where sustainable architecture seeks to minimize environmental impact, these ancient cities stand as a prehistoric masterclass. They demonstrate that meeting profound human need does not have to mean dominating nature. Instead, it can be a dialogue with the existing forms of the world, a partnership where necessity inspires not extraction, but elegant integration. This hidden harmony between human refuge and natural formation may be their quietest yet most enduring lesson. These silent cities carved into stone offer a final, timeless lesson about the architecture of hope. They stand as profound monuments not to conquest or power, but to human ingenuity under the most immense pressure. Every aspect of their existence, from the forgiving volcanic rock that invited their creation to the complex, breathing societies that thrived within them, weaves a single narrative. It is a story that begins with the universal chill of fear, is sustained by the warmth of shared faith, and culminates in a breathtaking display of resilience. They demonstrate that when a community faces a threat to its very existence, the response can transcend mere survival. It can become an act of collective creation, a deliberate choice to preserve an entire way of life by embedding it into the earth itself. Throughout history, in countless forms, people have met profound challenges with astonishing adaptation. The hidden cities of Cappadocia are one of humanity's most complete and compelling blueprints for this kind of endurance. They show us that culture is not a fragile thing to be sheltered, but a living force that can be actively protected, practiced, and even beautified in the depths of darkness. As we return from this journey into the silent, cool depths, let the image of these labyrinths remain. They are a powerful symbol, a reminder that light is not only found in the open sky. Sometimes the most enduring illumination is the kind we kindle ourselves, together in the deepest places, forged by an unbreakable will to see the dawn again.